Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America and the Blue Funk Broadcasting Radio Network. Great to have you with us on the program. As mentioned, back with us is Chris Orestis, the CEO of LifeCarePlanning, which created the model for converting life insurance policies into protected long-term care benefit funds. Chris, welcome back on the program. It's great to have you back with us. So much we talked about in the last show, so much more to talk about, a very important topic. Thanks for taking time to be back with us.
Oh, Rick, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me back.
We sort of laid the groundwork last time, and you can go to our archives or go to YouTube and to watch that first interview, and we'll touch on some of the basics as we move through the program. A lot has happened since then. One thing that's going on is a long-term care commission that is meeting in Washington, D.C., and talking about what is going to be a very serious problem. In fact, they're calling it the Silver Tsunami. Let's first of all talk about the Long-Term Care Commission and what they're setting out to try to accomplish.
Yes, the Long-Term Care Commission is a bipartisan commission that was appointed to meet and analyze what's going on with this country's ability to meet the crushing demand of paying for long-term care. You have 10,000 baby boomers a day who are turning 65. And the commission's conclusion was, with aging seniors and that many baby boomers turning 65 on a daily basis, that Medicare and Medicaid alone were not going to be enough to sustain the demand for long-term care services. What they concluded was that it was going to be necessary to have as much private pay and private market innovation come in and help offset Medicare and Medicaid's inability to keep up with that demand.
Innovation is really a key word to what you do. I mentioned that you were a pioneer in this process of being able to convert life insurance policies, convert that into funds that you can use for the private care. Let's talk about that, because when people hear the government talk about private, their immediate thought is it's going to cost me. The government is backing off from what I would hope to be they're supporting me as I get older and I need long-term care. But what you've come up with, and a pioneer in the concept of taking what many of us already have and unused if we're still alive, and converting that into funds that we can use for long-term care. Explain how that all works.
Well, first of all, let's remember that Medicaid is really intended to pay for people who are below the poverty line. If you are going to look to Medicaid to cover your long-term care expenses, that means you have spent down your assets to below the poverty line level. And one of the assets that counts against you when you're looking to go on to Medicaid is owning a life insurance policy. So a lot of people, as they get to the point where they're looking at how to pay for long-term care, and if they own a life insurance policy, will just abandon those policies. They let them go. We looked at that and we said, wait a minute, that's a significant asset that people own. They've paid premium payments for years. And now in those final years of their lives, when they're moving towards long-term care, they're just throwing those policies in the trash. There has to be a better way. Everybody that owns a life insurance policy, it's their legal right to be able to sell that policy. In essence, you can trade it in, you sell it for a discount of the death benefit. You can get its living benefit value today. What we do is we help a family do that, take that money, protect it in an irrevocable FDIC-insured long-term care benefit account that then will make monthly payments automatically to the care provider of their choice. When somebody does this, they're private pay, which means it's their money and they're in control. That's the big difference. If you go on to Medicaid, you're no longer in control. But if you're using your own funds with an approach such as using a life insurance policy conversion, you can choose. Do you want home care, assisted living, some form of skilled nursing? You're making those decisions because you're financially in control of what is going to happen to you.
Chris's website, and it's an excellent one because it really lays it out. It's in easy to understand terms, because it really is a rather easy concept that for some reason the life insurance companies have never really told us about, and we'll talk about that later. But the website is lifecarefunding.com. And we talked about this before, that when you get to this point where you're juggling funds, it seems like something that's expendable is, okay, I'm going to have to let the life insurance go. How often does that happen? I mean, we pay right up to the time where we really could be using it, and we let it go. We surrender the policy.
There's a shocking statistic, and that is that over 80% of life insurance policies that are taken out ultimately will not pay a death benefit, because people will either surrender it, allow it to lapse by stop paying the premiums, or it could be a term policy that expires.
80%, 4 out of 5 policies.
ultimately are not going to
Wow.
pay that benefit. And it's just, it's such a shame, particularly for seniors who have paid premiums for years and years and years. And we're talking to families every day. And you mentioned our website and that we do put a lot of information on there that is simple to understand. And among what we put on there are actual family stories. And we have a lot of them. Families that have used this very approach to turn around a situation where they didn't know how they were going to pay for long-term care. They were about to throw away a life insurance policy and instead converted it and put themselves in a position where they could choose the form of care they want. One of the things we're doing now is we're actually loading videos of interviews with families, and they're telling their stories direct to the people out there that are coming onto our website.
One of the families we will have on later, the second segment of today's program, we thought it was so important to have a family come on and talk about what this has meant to them. What types of life insurance policies can we convert? So many of us have term insurance policies, and we figure the only way we're ever going to be able to get any money from these is if we die. Is that a policy that we can convert as well?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up because every form of life insurance does qualify. If you have a term life policy, universal life, whole life, even a group life policy, any form of life insurance qualifies for the conversion. And again, so few people know about it that they're just throwing these policies away, but any form of life insurance will qualify.
How does a family go about beginning the process to convert? And again, that's all at the website, lifecarefunding.com. But to get it started, the very basic is, okay, what do I have to do? How do I qualify?
Well, that's the good news because there's a lot of good information out there. And there's a lot of people, particularly in the long-term care industry, people that work in nursing homes, home care workers, geriatric care managers, assisted living communities. They're out there telling families that this is something they can do. They've been on the front line now for years. They were the first to realize that using a life insurance policy was something that people could do to pay for care instead of throwing them away. So there's great information out there with long-term care companies. There's great information online. More and more insurance agents now are starting to talk about this and let people know and families know that this is a way they can use a policy to pay for care. And of course, there's great information on our website and just by Googling. Doing a little bit of research, you'd be amazed how much information, how many people are writing stories and talking about this very approach to helping people pay for long-term care of any form.
Chris Orestis is our guest on This Week in America. Our website is thisweekinamerica.us. Of course, you can go there, link on, and log on and get information from Chris, whose website is lifecarefunding.com, a pioneer in the field of protected long-term care benefits. And let's talk about, you mentioned getting it started, and the process is very simple. It's explained in lifecarefunding.com. When the congressional committee got together, they had sort of a dire outlook for what's going to happen. What is the reaction you're getting from Washington politicians? Are they getting on board now with what you're talking about, the program?
Despite the somewhat tepid response to this from life insurance companies who would prefer that we're not out there talking about this, political leaders in Washington and throughout the states have been very supportive. There's been a lot of activity going on. Recently, we've seen now that on the Medicare website itself, Medicare.gov, they have a page that talks about people can use life insurance policies to pay for long-term care. States have been introducing legislation because they want to make sure people are being informed of their legal right to do this. The state of Texas, a little earlier this summer, passed a law that mandates that their Medicaid department now must inform everybody that would look at Medicaid that first, if they have a life insurance policy, they could use this option, stay private pay, choose the form of care they want, and delay needing to go on to Medicaid. It's in the best interest of that senior and their family. It's also in the best interest of the taxpayers. If you can delay people going on to Medicaid, you're saving taxpayer dollars, and that's all of our money across the country.
Well, yeah, there's two exciting things coming out of this. One is for many people, it's something they already have, but they fully don't understand that they can actually use that to pay for long-term care. And second of all, whenever that money is coming out of the private sector, that's not public money that goes into that. So you're saving taxpayer money in the long run. Everybody wins.
That's right. And we're really happy about the kind of support we're seeing politically. A lot of very positive stories in the press. consumer groups. AARP spoke positively about this in a testimony in Florida, where Florida was looking at that same legislative approach to make sure that the Medicaid department's talking about it. The head of AARP in Florida spoke up and said, this is good for the consumer, it's good for the state, it's good for the taxpayers, it's good for the providers of care. And they encouraged that Florida and all states around the country adopt this kind of approach to making sure people are informed that this is something they can do.
What percentage of a policy are we able to convert?
You know, it ranges a low of, say, 20% to a high of 60% and even greater. On average, about 45% is what we see across the board. You know, it swings between a low and a high, but it averages out to be about 45% of the death benefit. So if you had a $100,000 life insurance policy in a very short time frame, that could be turned into $45,000 potentially of long-term care benefit, protected in an account, with that account making payments every month directly to your care provider on your behalf.
Yeah, how do you go about doing that? What's the logistics of actually setting up that payment process every month and determining how much you're going to be able to pay each month?
When the person engages the policy conversion, they will sign a bank and trust document where the money is going to be held. That will then, at their direction, establish the amount of money that would be paid on a monthly basis and to the care provider of their choice. Now, what's good is this is a very flexible benefit. So you may start out in home care at a couple $1,000s a month. Your needs could change. A few months later, you need to move to assisted living for $5,000 a month. Well, then you can just change that benefit amount to go from the 2 to the 5 and go from home care to assisted living. The accounts also hold a funeral benefit for every family, so that when their loved one does finally pass, a portion of that benefit's there to help with the funeral expenses as well.
What happens if I outlive the amount I'm able to convert?
If anybody were to outlive the benefit, let's say half the money were there was $20,000 sitting in the account and they passed away. Well, that money would automatically go to the family. A designated beneficiary of the family would receive that money automatically.
You know, falling into the category that the baby boomers that are turning 65 on a daily basis, you mentioned like 10,000 of us fall into that category, get mailings a couple times a week for long-term care insurance, just so people aren't confused. Explain the difference, because this is actually using something, again, that most of us already have.
Oh, thanks for bringing that up. There's a big difference between long-term care insurance and a life insurance policy conversion. Long-term care insurance is something you're going to buy in advance as young as possible to get as small a premium payment as possible. So some people will buy a long-term care insurance policy and hold it for 20 years or more before they need it. With this approach, you're using a life insurance policy you already own to address an immediate need for care. So if you didn't have long-term care insurance, or if you did, it doesn't matter. If you have life insurance, you're going to be able to convert it in a very quick process. There's no fees associated with it, and you will be able to address immediate needs. So the families that are using this program are families that are trying to cover the cost of care almost immediately, within a pretty short time frame. Many of them are already in a care environment and might be running out of money. Others want to get into some form of care and they can't afford it. They convert the life insurance policy and they're very quickly able to establish that account to take over those payments.
A couple of statistics that jump out is the number of us who will have to use this and the cost that we're talking about. You know, if you're healthy right now, you're really probably not thinking, I'm not going to need long-term care at any point. I work out every day. I eat right. I'm healthy. Talk about the percentage of us that actually will fall in the category of needing long-term care and what we can look at as a reasonable expense for that care.
3 out of 4 people over the age of 65 are going to require some form of long-term care in their remaining lifetime. And the expenses associated with long-term care can be significant. It's common that somebody could be spending as much as $100,000 a year cash on long-term care and assisted living, home care. Skilled nursing at a private pay level can be very expensive. So what we encourage families to do is make sure that they're planning, make sure that they're having a discussion amongst themselves. Are we prepared? Are we planning? What do we have for assets? Is there a life insurance policy? Is there a long-term care insurance policy? Is there savings? What do we have to work with so that we're not caught unaware and not ready to handle a crisis situation when it arises, which unfortunately is the point when most people start talking about long-term care. A loved one's laying in a hospital bed everybody starts looking around at each other and says, well, what are we going to do about long-term care now? And that's when they start planning, when the clock's ticking.
Great information, easy to understand, easy to follow, lifecarefunding.com. The one thing that jumps out as you read through that is that by converting, we really are in control. Of course, we've got a budget that we're dealing with, but we can pick and choose where we want to go, the type of service that we receive, the type of care we receive. If we leave it up to the government, they're going to tell us what type of care we're going to get.
Exactly. You want to be in a position of control, not in a position of being controlled. You want financial independence, not financial dependence. And for the middle class seniors, particularly that we work with, in their final years of life, dignity, financial freedom are important. They deserve it. And if they have an asset, if they have planned, and using something like a life insurance policy conversion can make all the difference. Don't let those policies go. You've got to hang on to them and understand what you're confronting as you move forward when it comes to long-term care.
Chris Orestis, our guest on This Week in America, LifeCareFunding.com, a pioneer in the area of protected long-term care benefit funds. A couple minutes left in the show. We want to talk about what we're going to do in the second segment. Before I do that, from a personal standpoint, and I mentioned you're the pioneer, been doing this for around 5 years. What's it? And I know you want to get the word out to more people, which is what we're doing and doing by going and lobbying in various states around the country. But what's it feel like from a positive standpoint that at the end of the day, I was just able to talk to a number of people that thought it was hopeless, that they were going to have to end up in a home of some kind. They didn't even know they had funds available to actually pick assisted care, something close to home. Again, their choice. It has to be a very good feeling for you at the end of the day when you've helped people in this situation.
Rick, I can't tell you how pleased we are. Everybody at our company that's talking to families, helping them in these situations, because when they call us, they're in a crisis mode. They're looking for somebody who can help them, give them some information, lend them an ear of understanding and answer their questions. That's what we do. We lay out for them what options are, and sometimes our option's not the right option for them, and we'll let them know. If we're not something that can help them, we'll point them in the direction of something else that can. But if they have that life insurance policy, oftentimes we're the right option that they could choose to help pay for care. And it feels good when you're getting that positive feedback and you're knowing you're making a difference in people's lives, helping them to be in control of their decisions, get the proper form of long-term care. And along the way, keeping people off of Medicaid longer. We know we're also saving taxpayer dollars across this country, and that makes us feel pretty darn good, too.
The website is lifecarefunding.com. Our website, thisweekinamerica.com, will have that. You can log on to that. Lifecarefunding.com, our website, thisweekinamerica.us. You've got testimonials up there. When we take a break, we're going to come back and actually talk to a family that's actually gone through the process. There's nothing like testimonials from real people. They're all very emotional stories. Talk a little bit about what we're going to see in the next segment.
Yeah, you're going to be speaking with a woman who used our program to help her father remain at home. His desire and the family's desire was to use a life insurance policy that they weren't even sure they were going to hang on to. It was getting expensive in premiums to continue keeping. They converted that policy into something that allowed their father to remain at home the rest of his life, getting nursing care at home with his family. And I think you're going to really be touched by the story and the impact it had on this family, who at first were a little skeptical. Wait a minute, we're going to get rid of a life insurance policy? Is this real? I've never heard of this before. But they went forward with it, and it made a huge difference in their life. And I think you're going to really feel like you've learned a lot after you've spoken with the woman that will be joining the program shortly.
Well, it's interesting because so many of those elements you're talking about are relatable to us. It sounds like a fairly common scenario. We will do this, and then Chris will be back to wrap up the program. Again, the website is lifecarefunding.com. Chris Orestis, our guest on the program. We'll take a break. We'll be right back to talk further about the protected long-term care benefit funds with a family member, someone who's actually gone through it. Again, the website, lifecarefunding.com. We'll be right back after these messages. With us on the program, continuing our discussion, can your life insurance help you before you die? This time we're talking with a family member, someone who was impacted by the topic of today's program. Carrie Sckulich is with us on the show. We're talking about Life Care Funding. Their website is lifecarefunding.com. Carrie, welcome to This Week in America. Great to have you with us on the program.
Thanks for having me, Rick.
It's such an important topic, and you know firsthand how important it is. Let's talk about your particular case. Your father, 63 years old, gets a diagnosis of cancer. Pick it up there and what you went through in trying to care for your father and how Life Care entered the picture.
Yes, my father was diagnosed with lung cancer. He was 63 years old, a very active man, owned his own business. After 4 years, 4 surgeries, another diagnosis of brain cancer, his business faltered. We had to close his business. And as far as surgeries, medicine was a key thing. I could no longer keep up. My husband was electrical contractor, and our business started to falter, like many people, during the years of 2007, 8. I did not know what to do any longer. I could not afford my dad's medicines. My dad was very, very, very independent man, and he felt so bad that he was putting me in a bad financial way.
Well, like so many people that are in a situation like that, your father has a life insurance policy and serious thought was given to just letting it lapse, just stop making payments on there. And so many people do that. Talk about that and when you realized I actually can use this life insurance policy to help pay for my dad's care.
Well, anyone in this situation, and more of us grow every day of taking care of our parents, we actually came to a point, Rick, where it was either pay for my insurance policy or my dad's insurance policy. We couldn't pay for both. And I was simply online one night just looking for answers, I was not going to put my father in a nursing home. He was 63 years old. I wanted to take care of him, but it was getting harder and harder. And I came upon Life Care Funding site through a assisted living link. And I spoke to Jane there, and she right away comforted me and told me to give her all the particulars of my dad's policy. And of my dad's policy. And Jane was just so great in doing that. She comforted me. I was at that point very desperate. And she told me she would get back to me. The very next day, she got back to me, and she told me that my dad was eligible and that I needed to fill out some paperwork. And I have to tell you, a lot of family members, they kind of were skeptical. They did not think that this could happen.
We're talking with Carrie Sckulich. The website is lifecarefunding.com. Very important discussion with a family member who went through what we were talking about with Chris Orestis on a past program and again on the program today, how you can actually use your life insurance. And we've talked with Chris about the application process. You've got so much on your mind at this particular point in time to be sitting there for hours and going through pages and pages, but that's not the case, is it, when you do the application?
Oh, no, it was the easiest thing I've ever had to do. It was just basically getting some doctor's information about the type of disease that my dad had and giving it to them. And it was very, very simple. They made it simple. It was something, of course, you don't understand. You think, how can this be done? And so anything that you understand, you think, oh, this is just going to be very difficult. It was not difficult. It was easy. And they were with me every step of the way. They were wonderful. They were angels.
Let's talk about, first of all, what this meant to you. You are the caregiver at this particular point in time. As you're talking, and we sense this either going through it ourselves or knowing family members who go through it or friends that go through it. I mean, literally, you're losing sleep every night trying to figure out how you're going to care for someone and be able to afford care for that person.
It is the worst thing. I do not wish it on anybody. I was online trying to get medicines from Germany and Canada, which I did. You do anything. You see your family member, and it's the most helpless feeling. And it was helpless for my father. You know, he People would ask him, how you doing with the cancer? He'd say, the cancer's fine. I just can't afford to live. And it was very desperate times. And what they gave us and what it meant to me and my family is the last year that my dad had, we weren't worrying about, how are we going to pay for this? What are we going to do? I wasn't worried about it. My father wasn't worried about putting the burden on me. We were able to spend quality time. We were able to talk stress-free. If my dad needed something extra as far as in his health condition, I would go to the store and get it. I didn't have to worry about it. What they gave us is, I can't describe it in words. I know I've heard a lot of people knock this thing and say, oh no, even in my family, but until you're in that situation, you do not know the feeling of gratitude I have for these people. They let my dad die with dignity, and I was daddy's little girl. So
what type of care were you able to provide for your dad? We've talked with Chris about the different types of care that you could do. Basically, it's up to you at this point. You have the funds available to you through the life insurance policy, and you're doing it on your terms rather than somebody else's terms.
That's so wonderful. Assisted living is great. I've had family members, grandparents, grandfathers in assisted living, but depending on your area, it's all on you. It's $3,000 to $6,000 a month. And I figured I was going to put my father in assisted living, but I figured for that amount of money, I got him a full-time 24-hour nurse. It was one-to-one care. If he wanted scrambled eggs at 4:00 in the morning, he got scrambled eggs at 4:00 in the morning. So I was able to choose what type of care I wanted for him, and I did. That was my choice. He was in his home. That's where he wanted to die. His family members were able to see him, visit him, and he had a 24-hour nurse.
We're just about out of time, 30 seconds or so left, and the website is LifeCareFunding.com, and we'll have Chris back to wrap things up here in just a couple of seconds. What did Life Care Funding mean to you?
I mean, I could cry. It meant everything. Anyone who knows me knows the story. I will tell everyone about this because, like I said, it's enough that you have a family member that's ill and dying. But to have a family member ill and dying and not be able to provide for them, that's worse than the illness to me. So to have that is just something that I can't even describe. I can't describe the feeling. I can't describe. My father was so grateful to them. He just was so grateful, and they were so understanding, even after his death. And they do provide the death benefit for you. Also, I want people to know that it's not just they give you that. There is a death benefit that is provided in this program. And they got it to me immediately, just immediately, and sent flowers. They were just, I consider them family.
All of this by using a life insurance policy that in so many cases, and almost in the case with Carrie and her father, you were just going to let go. You were just going to stop making payments on it because we have other bills to pay. It's called Life Care Funding. The website is LifeCareFunding.com. Carrie Sckulich has been our guest on the program. Carrie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Rick.
To wrap up the program, Chris Orestis is back with us. He is the pioneer of the concept of protected long-term care benefit funds. His website is LifeCareFunding.com. Chris, it was really fascinating to have Carrie on the program and talking about, again, a scenario that so many of us can relate to.
Absolutely. Carrie's story is a great one to hear. And her situation is very common. We run into it all the time, every day across this country. Families struggling, they want to provide the best for a loved one. They can't figure it out. It's a complex system to navigate. The financials, what forms of care. We're here to try and help families with that. In her situation, we were so glad that we were able to take that life insurance policy and turn it into something that let her keep her dad at home so he could remain with her and the family for the rest of his days, which was much more valuable to them than trying to hold on to a life insurance policy, or even worse, throwing it out and getting nothing back in return at all.
We've heard a lot about this lately, basically because of you taking this message nationwide. We've got the Long-Term Care Commission going. Got about 30 seconds left in the program. Talk about the momentum. I mean, it's even got a name now, the silver tsunami. Is it getting enough attention that we're going to make some progress?
I think so. I think it's a situation that can't be ignored. You can't go onto TV or read a newspaper without some story about the funding crisis, the aging generation, what we're going to do. And our company's out there trying to get the word out. And if you have a life insurance policy, don't throw it away. It's an asset that can help you pay for care. Don't sit there thinking just Medicare, Medicaid's going to take care of everything and give you whatever you want. You want to be in control, and this is a way to do that.
The website is very simple, lifecarefunding.com. You can get that information at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Chris Orestis has been our guest back on the program, lifecarefunding.com. We'll be checking back with Chris from time to time. The website is very easy to navigate, very easy to understand. It's all laid out for you, lifecarefunding.com. Chris, thank you so much for being on the program. Best of luck in the future, and we'll have you back to talk about it.
Rick, it was great to be back, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you. You're listening to This Week in America on the Blue Funk Broadcasting Radio Network.